I met Claire at a co-working space in downtown Chicago, one of those sleek, open-concept offices with cold-brewed taps and too much glass. I was a data analyst contracting for a logistics firm. She worked in marketing for a boutique PR agency that handled lifestyle brands. We met at the shared coffee counter. She complained about the machine being broken. I joked that maybe it was protesting influencer culture. She laughed, a genuine one, and asked if I was always that cynical before noon. Claire had that mix of charm and confidence that makes rooms tilt toward her. She was quick, ambitious, the kind of woman who seemed to already have the next 3 promotions mapped out in her head. I liked her energy. After a few mornings of casual coffee banter, she asked if I wanted to grab lunch. We ended up at a taco truck 2 blocks down, sitting on the curb and trading stories about bad managers. By the time we finished, I already knew I'd say yes to seeing her again. Our first months felt easy. Claire liked planning things, a new restaurant opening, a concert, a rooftop bar. I liked going along. She teased me for being low-key, said it was nice to date someone who didn't make everything a competition. At that stage, her decisiveness felt refreshing. We started spending weekends together, gym on Saturdays, brunch on Sundays, the kind of routine that made the city feel smaller. But under that smooth rhythm, I started noticing how tightly Claire managed her world. If I was 5 minutes late, she'd sigh and say, "You know, time management says a lot about respect." If I didn't text back within an hour, she'd follow up with a message. It wasn't malicious, more like she lived on a constant clock that demanded everyone match her pace. At first I chalked it up to her job. PR deadlines are brutal. By the time we hit 6 months, I'd met her friends, mostly other marketing and communications people who used words like leverage and optics, even at dinner. They were friendly, in that networking way, and always a little too polished. I liked her best in quieter moments, when she came over in sweats, hair tied up, eating takeout noodles while venting about clients. That's when she felt real. My closest friend, Ethan, noticed how much of my schedule revolved around her. "You sure you're not being managed like one of her clients?" he joked one night over beers. I laughed it off, but part of me wondered if he had a point. Still, I told myself that relationships required compromise, and Claire's intensity came with good sides too. She remembered birthdays, brought thoughtful gifts, always pushed me to ask for raises and opportunities. Things began to shift after I landed a full-time role at a finance startup. The job was demanding, a step up from my contractor days, and for the first time, I couldn't always drop everything to meet her expectations. If I worked late, she'd say, "You could have told me earlier," or, "You make time for what matters." The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they made me feel like I was perpetually failing some invisible standard. I tried explaining, "Claire, I'm trying to prove myself at this company. It's new, there's pressure." She'd nod, kiss me, and then the next week it would repeat, another dinner I cancelled, another subtle jab about priorities. When we finally went on a weekend trip to Lake Geneva with a few friends, I hoped it would reset things. It started great, sun, beer, music. But the second night, when I forgot to pack her preferred sunscreen brand, she snapped in front of everyone. "Do you ever listen when I talk?" she said, voice sharp enough to silence the group. I laughed awkwardly, trying to diffuse it, but she doubled down. "Seriously, you don't pay attention to details. It's like you live in your own bubble." I felt my face heat. Everyone looked away. That was the first time embarrassment edged into resentment. On the drive back, she apologized, half-heartedly, saying stress made her reactive. I accepted it, but something small cracked open in me that day. After the Lake Geneva trip, I told myself we'd hit a rough patch. Every couple does. I started being extra careful, texting more, showing up early, double-checking plans. But instead of smoothing things, my efforts seemed to raise the bar. If I sent flowers to her office, she'd say, "They're sweet, but lilies aren't really my thing." If I cooked dinner, she'd critique how I plated it. It was like living inside an endless performance review. Ethan noticed again. "Man, you look like you're bracing for feedback all the time," he said one night after work. "She's not your boss." I told him he didn't understand, that Claire just liked structure, but his words stuck. The breaking point began to form one Friday night at a networking event her agency hosted. It was at a rooftop lounge, glass walls, skyline glittering like a resume of ambition. I was proud of her. She'd helped organize the event, and the guest list was packed with brand execs and influencers. But somewhere between the second cocktail and the small talk, I started feeling out of place. Everyone there spoke in polished sound bites about storytelling and market alignment. I mostly smiled and nodded. Then came the moment that rewired everything. One of her coworkers, a loud guy named Ryan, joked about how Claire keeps her boyfriend on a short leash. She laughed loudly. "You're not wrong," she said, patting my shoulder. "He's still learning how to keep up with me." The table laughed. I froze. It wasn't just teasing, it was the casual way she said it, like I was a project she was managing publicly. I made some excuse about needing air and stepped out to the balcony. The skyline looked sharp and far away. I stayed out there longer than I meant to, just breathing. When Claire found me, she said, "Hey, don't be sensitive, it was just a joke." But the thing about jokes is they reveal what people actually believe. That night, when we got back to her apartment, I told her the truth. "You embarrassed me. You talk about me like I'm some underperforming intern." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my god, you're really going to sulk about that?" "I was just being funny. Everyone teases their partners." "Not like that," I said quietly. She sighed, crossing her arms. "You take everything too personally. Maybe if you were more confident, you wouldn't." That was the first time I didn't apologize. I just said, maybe, and slept on the couch. Over the next weeks, I tried to find equilibrium again. I buried myself in work. My team was launching a new analytics product, and I got to lead part of it. The late nights didn't feel so heavy when I was building something that mattered. Claire, meanwhile, got busier too, juggling clients and planning an industry panel she'd be moderating. Our texts became transactional. Logistics, schedules, you good? And, yeah. When we did see each other, it felt like trying to sync two calendars that no longer matched. She accused me of checking out emotionally, and maybe she was right. But I was tired of being managed, measured, and found lacking. The final blow came 2 months later. She invited me to another agency mixer, promising it would be chill this time. I almost declined, but part of me wanted to believe her. The night went fine until near the end, when someone asked about our relationship. Claire laughed and said, "He's the stable one, doesn't rock the boat, doesn't chase big dreams." "It's cute." The room laughed again. That same sting, deeper this time. I excused myself, took the elevator down alone, and walked 3 blocks before realizing I was shaking. She texted, "Where'd you go?" I didn't answer. When I got home, I drafted a message. "I can't do this anymore." But instead, I waited. I wanted to say it in person. We met the next day at a cafe near the river. She was dressed impeccably, as always, cream coat, gold hoops, that polished confidence that had once drawn me in. Before I could speak, she said, "So, you're really mad about last night?" "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm done." She blinked. "You're breaking up with me? Over a joke?" "It's not about one joke. It's about how you treat me. You talk to me like I'm lucky to orbit you. I used to admire your drive, Claire. Now I feel like I'm always apologizing for being human." For once, she didn't have a comeback ready. She stared at her coffee, then said, "You're overreacting. Relationships take work." "Work, yes," I said. "Management, no." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Finally, she stood up, muttered, "Fine," and walked out. I watched her go, half expecting her to turn around. She didn't. That was how it ended. No tears, no scene, just a quiet unraveling in a cafe that smelled like burnt espresso. The weeks that followed were strange. There was relief, but also a hollow ache where routine used to be. I started hanging out with Ethan more, took weekend trips, learned to cook something besides takeout pasta. Work went well. I got recognized for my project, and for the first time, I felt like my life belonged entirely to me. Claire texted twice. Once to say, "I hope you're okay," and later, "I miss talking." I replied politely but didn't re-engage. I didn't hate her. I just didn't want to return to being managed love. 6 months later, our paths crossed again. A mutual friend, Nora, invited a group of us to a bar to celebrate her promotion. Claire showed up, unexpectedly. She looked good. Different in a subtle way, less polished, more grounded. She smiled when she saw me, hesitant but genuine. We talked a bit, awkwardly at first. She said she'd left her agency and started consulting independently. "I burned out," she admitted. "Turns out micromanaging everything doesn't scale." I laughed softly. Guess we both learned that the hard way. Yeah, she said, her smile fading into something honest. I've been thinking about what happened. I wasn't fair to you. I thought control meant care. I didn't realize how small that makes people feel. It wasn't an apology in the formal sense, but it landed like one. I told her I appreciated it. We didn't linger, just exchanged a quiet understanding that sometimes growth happens separately. That night, I walked home through the cool air, feeling something close to closure. Life moved on. My career took shape, steady and solid. I started dating again, slowly, carefully. I met Emily, a UX designer with a dry sense of humor and zero interest in appearances. Our relationship grew quietly, the way plants do when no one's watching. There were no performative posts, no need to prove compatibility to anyone else. Sometimes, I think of Claire, not with bitterness, but curiosity about how people change. I heard through Nora that she'd started therapy, was building better boundaries, and even reconnected with old friends she'd drifted from. I was glad. Then, one fall evening almost a year after the breakup, I ran into her again at a networking event, different company this time, same city skyline. She approached first, smiling in a way that carried none of the old defensiveness. "Hey, Matt," she said. "How've you been?" "Good," I said. "You?" "Learning," she replied simply. We talked for a few minutes about work, mutual friends, normal things. Before leaving, she said, "You taught me something important, even if it took me too long to see it. You can't love someone by constantly improving them." I smiled. "You taught me something too. Sometimes strength means walking away." We shook hands, strangers again, but better ones. On the way home, I thought about how love often teaches us through failure. Claire wasn't a villain. She was just someone who mistook control for safety, ambition for affection. And I wasn't a saint. I'd enabled her behavior by staying quiet too long. We were both learning how to be softer in a world that rewards hardness. Now, when Emily asks for something, more communication, more presence, I don't hear it as criticism. I hear it as care. And when I mess up, I don't brace for judgment. I apologize, we adjust, we move on. Every so often, I'll see a LinkedIn post of Claire's, something thoughtful about leadership and empathy, and I'll smile. Because maybe that's how real growth works. Not in grand reconciliations, but in quiet evolutions that ripple outward. Looking back, I don't remember the humiliation as much as the moment after. The one where I realized I deserved to be treated as an equal, not a project. That realization didn't just end a relationship. It started a better way of being in one. And maybe that's the quiet victory of adulthood. Learning that love isn't about keeping up or measuring up, but about showing up, consistently, imperfectly, honestly. Claire once told me, early on, I just want everything to be perfect. I didn't know then how much pressure those words carried. Now I know perfection's a myth. What matters is presence. The small gestures, the shared laugh after a long day, the apology that actually sticks, the patience to try again. If I could talk to my younger self, the one who stood on that balcony feeling small under the weight of her joke, I'd tell him this: don't chase approval. Don't shrink to fit someone else's idea of enough. The right love won't ask you to. And if I could talk to Claire, I'd say, you were never the enemy. We were just two people trying to build something solid on shaky ground. We both learned to listen better, to ourselves, and maybe, someday, to someone new. In the end, we didn't get a movie-style ending. No grand gesture, no public reconciliation. Just two people walking separate paths in the same city, carrying the quiet lessons of what it means to love without control. That's enough.